but it's been a historical day for our country. Late this afternoon, history was made in New York when former President Trump entered a courtroom to be indicted on criminal charges.
He was arraigned on 34 counts of falsifying business documents connected to hush money payments to two women toward the end of his 2016 presidential campaign. There is a lot going on here, so we've brought in our legal expert, Stephanie Haney. She joins us now on the set for Legally Speaking.
Yeah, Stephanie, this has been unfolding through the afternoon. Folks have been watching the coverage, but it's only recently that the actual charges have been unsealed. What do we know so far?
Yes, that's right. We got to look at the indictment today, and this really is a historic day because the president could face more than 100 years in prison on these charges if convicted. Remember, innocent until proven guilty, of course, but he did plead not guilty to 34 charges, and those charges are falsifying business records in the first degree. Now, that's a Class E felony in the state of New York. That means that each of those charges carries a possible sentence of up to 4 years in prison. If you do the math, that's 136 years. Now, of course, we've been talking a lot about the hush payment to former adult film star Stormy Daniels, but there were more payments mentioned as well, including one to a doorman at one of his properties, and more crimes too. Now, even though all of the charges here are for falsifying business records, but there were other potential crimes not charged that were mentioned in that announcement.
Of course, Alvin Bragg just addressing the fact that his predecessor and federal prosecutors who've been looking into this declined charges. They never came forward with charges. And Trump, according to reporters in the courtroom, emphatically pleaded not guilty. And one of his attorneys, he's got a team of, I believe, 4 attorneys. He just added one last night, said that he doesn't even think the case would make it to trial. Hush money payments, not themselves illegal, Stephanie. What could be illegal, though, about this case with Stormy Daniels?
Yeah, that's a great point. Hush money payments themselves, again, not necessarily illegal. This gets to the root of what makes these allegations of falsifying business records felonies rather than misdemeanors. It's the alleged intent to commit or cover up another crime that makes these charges felonies. Now, the prosecutor says Trump said he was paying legal fees to Michael Cohen, but that those payments were actually the hush money payments at issue and mentioned in that indictment. Prosecutor Alvin Bragg says the resulting false business records were then used to violate state election law, commit tax evasion by labeling the payments as income to Cohen rather than a reimbursement, and that the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels specifically exceeded federal campaign finance violations. So again, not the payments themselves, but the way in which they were recorded that makes this activity potentially illegal. And good point to make here so that everyone's super clear. These secondary crimes that are mentioned don't have to be charged in this case in order to be brought into making this a felony.
Okay, so what's next in all of this?
Well, it's going to be a long road, that is certainly for sure. The lead up to this trial, if a trial happens, which is something that his attorneys did allude to, is going to take a long time. It could be a year before this goes to trial. If it does, again, lots of things can happen from this point. There could be a plea deal, highly unlikely in this case, but it could happen. There will be lots of pre-trial motions. That's not posturing, that's just being a responsible lawyer. One of the things we do know is that Trump's team has also talked about seeking a change of venue. Here's an important note on that. So right now, this case would move forward in Manhattan, and his team has talked about trying to move it to Staten Island. Now, if you take a look at the 2020 election results, now these are just facts. The former president, lost in Manhattan in 2020. He also lost in the Bronx and he also lost in Queens, but he won in Staten Island. So if you take a look at just simple numbers, the former president and his team might be thinking he's likely to get a jury that's more sympathetic if it moves to Staten Island. Again, not very likely, in my opinion, that there will be a change of venue in this case.
It was interesting. I'd read earlier today that he lost Manhattan 94% of the residents in Manhattan voted against him, which is what the lawyers will use as saying, we'll never get a fair jury here. Interesting. A long way to go. They were saying maybe next spring.
Potentially.
Wow.
I mean, it will take a long time. You have to remember, there's a lot of people in Manhattan. There are a lot of other cases that are already in process, and other cases have to move forward as well. So if you're interested in learning more about this and the other criminal investigations, by the way, that the former president faces, we have a Legally Speaking special out. That's on WKYC+. I talked with 3 former federal prosecutors about all of the charges he faces. I think worth checking out.
There's a lot more to come, for sure. Thanks so much, Stephanie.